In fact, that's probably a better title for this. It's like, how has my relationship with writing changed over the years? And so that's what I'm going to say. Hi, my name is Dami, and today we're going to be talking about my relationship with writing and how it's changed over the years. I actually started off recording this video announcing the title as how I balance writing and doctoring, and then saying that was a clickbait title because I don't think I'm actually doing it very well. This is just my relationship with writing, how it's changed. This is about me. This is not a teaching video. I'm not teaching you a new skill. I'm not teaching you how to do anything. At the end, I kind of give my tips in terms of balancing things, but this is just a chit chat. If you care. If you don't, you can leave. It's okay. But I also figured, this is a nice setup. I got a new camera, so I'm not battling with lights anymore. So this video was inspired by a Brandon Sanderson video that I saw. The video was about balancing, like, work-life balance as a writer. He says that, writing is something that can dominate every waking moment of your life. And he is very true with that one. And now that I kind of have the opportunity to engage with it more in a professional way, I have to think about it as not just something I enjoy, which I do very much enjoy, but something that is also work. The way I've decided to structure this video is really to just kind of give my story regarding my relationship with writing from childhood years all the way up until now. So we'll start off with childhood years. And I like to kind of think of this season of life as the unbalanced life, but in a good way. In a fun way. So growing up, I've always been a very driven person. If there's something that I want to do, there's something I want to accomplish, I will drop everything and I will do everything within my power to accomplish it. But balance is key. Balance is key to everything. And too much of a good thing is also poisonous, right? Water can become poisonous. I think I was able to engage in the too much of a good thing, which was reading and writing. And I was able to engage with it for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm a very driven person, which means if I want to do something, I'm going to do the thing. And if that means I'm going to read for 8 hours, I will read for 8 hours. Number two, growing up, my childhood years, at least the childhood years I remember, I lived a very privileged life. I'm a first generation immigrant. Parents came here from Nigeria to give us an excellent education. I never wanted truly for anything that was necessary. We lived in the suburbs, went to a really great high school. I'm not worried about finances. I'm not worried about where's my next meal coming from. Really, my only job growing up was to get good grades. I attended a really great public school. I did really well in that public school. I think that's a really big part of this, the unbalanced life growing up, is because if you are a child, right, and you are worried about where your next meal is coming from, and you are worried about just being safe at home, there isn't a lot of room for just unsupervised thinking, which is, I think, where creativity happens. There's not a lot of room for that if you're worrying about bills and you're 10 years old. Available rent-free brain space was so important for my creativity growing up. I needed that time. I needed my brain to work unsupervised. And because I was lucky enough to, live especially financially privileged life, that's not something that I was very actively stressing out about. Being privileged in that sense and just being an inherently very driven person, I think the Nigerians, they put it in you, okay? I think a lot of first generation immigrants can very much relate to the pressures and expectations that come with being a first generation immigrant. I do not think I was an exception in that case. Very driven person because your parents are driven. Parents came here with $5 in their pocket. And by the time I was able to formulate memories, I was not aware that was the situation. But because they're the ones who came here with $5 in their pocket, they very much instill a very hardworking ethic. For me, I think it worked out well. I think it worked out fine. The other thing was I liked school. I was a nerd. I loved school. I liked going to school. I liked learning new things. I did really well in school. And I think in part that's because I'm not worrying about other stuff. So all of these things coming together, right? I like school, enjoy learning. Overall, parents did a great job instilling a very hardworking ethic, living a life where I'm not worrying about things that, frankly, I think children should not have to worry about, but we live in a broken society where children are worrying about these things. This combination meant that I had a lot of available brain space to engage with whatever I wanted to engage in. And I like to engage in worlds that did not exist. I loved reading. I loved books. I would read in the bathroom where no one could disturb me, including my younger sister. And so I would stay there for hours and I would read books. And there were poop particles on the books, but I did not care because I was 7 years old. That is still disgusting. For example, I did not mind growing up going to places that I did not want to go to. You know, as a kid, you have no rights. And so your parents take you wherever you need to go. And I didn't mind too much because I would daydream. I would just daydream about whatever book I'm reading or what could happen. Later on, when I started to write more, I could just daydream, even as an elementary school kid who's writing silly stories about nothing. I could just daydream about what my characters are doing. And so it was fine. Whenever I was in some place I did not want to be, I would just check out mentally. But my point, though, in all of this is to say I had the mental bandwidth and the brain space to think about whatever it is I wanted to think about. And that was the start of my unbalanced life. I had like chores and responsibilities, and like I was in band and all this other stuff. So like I had things to do, I had places to be, but that's a lot of free time. I got into fan fiction in high school, and this to this day blows my mind. I did the math. 2009 to 2011 would have been end of high school and a year and a half ish of college. Writing fan fiction, and I was posting them on fanfiction.net because we did not have AO3. I wrote 500,000 words of fan fiction, and so this does not include any other writing that I did. 500,000 words of fan fiction. When I did the math, I was like, was I even studying? Like, how do you write that much? What the heck? And actually, I went back to visit fanfiction.net because I remember a year or two ago, that place was ad central. It was such a mess to navigate. It was disgusting. Have they cleaned up fanfiction.net? Like, it seemed just cleaner to look at on desktop, at least for the 2 seconds I was on there to do the math. So I wrote a lot. Because I had that mental bandwidth, I had that space. Virginia Woolf, she talks about in those essays a room of one's own, and that's just very important to have that sort of space to let your brain run amok and come up with whatever it wants to come up with. So that was, the start of my life, the unbalanced life, and it was unbalanced because I did not have to worry about anything. I had no responsibilities other than school. I lived in a Nigerian household. School was king. And so, and I did well enough in school and I wasn't getting in trouble. I honestly would consider kind of like the beginning years, these unbalanced years for me, also including college, because for me, I did end up with a full scholarship to college, which included not just tuition, but room and board, food on campus, like every meal, like all of it. And even though it was a merit-based scholarship, right, based on grades, interviews required, you do have to be privileged in order to qualify for these things. If you're unable to take advantage of the sort of programs that they kind of expect that you've been able to do because of your living situation, like you're essentially weeded out of these things. The purpose in me talking about like my privileges is not to discredit my accomplishments. The purpose of me talking about my privilege is to provide context so that other people, when they look at me and see what I'm accomplished, that they have the right, that they are able to do so with discerning eyes, right? That they're able to decide, okay, well, what advice of this person's can I take and what advice is just pure nonsense to me. Please remember that context is everything. Yes, I did get a full ride to college, so I'm not paying for college, not worrying about it. But the only reason I was able to get that full ride into college is because I had the opportunities that were available to me at my very well-off, privileged high school. Certain opportunities are not available to you unless you already have other opportunities. Those opportunities are not available to you unless you're in the right class structure, category, what have you. Please keep context in mind and don't compare and contrast yourself to other people. You're on your own journey. You got this. So going into college, I'm not worrying about finances because every single meal is paid for. My room and board is paid for. I lived on college campus for 4 years for that reason. Like, what college student lives on campus for 4 years? The people in this scholarship program did because it was free. I'm literally just worrying about like making good grades. And yes, there was a minimum threshold of grades that I needed to make to keep my scholarship. I wasn't ever in a position where that was going to be taken away from me. I wanted to do well enough to become a physician. And so there was definitely a lot of added stress from that perspective. But that was my only stressor, was to do well in school and to score well on standardized exams. It's like really my only stressor in college as a very young adult. So again, I have the mental bandwidth, I have the brain space for my mind to run amok because I'm worrying about nothing except for school. Part 2, the unbalanced life evolves. And it stays unbalanced, but for different reasons. And that reason is now I go to medical school. So I get into medical school, super exciting, woo. Medical school was hard. I did not expect it to be a piece of cake. I knew it was going to be difficult. But this is when school got hard for me. This is when I was like, oh, Okay, yeah, no, bet. This was go to school all day during the daytime and literally spending every waking moment studying, and then feeling guilty about the moments you weren't studying. Like feeling guilty about having to run to get some fast food to eat and then come back home because A, you don't have money, so why are you buying back fast food? And B, you should have been studying. Why are you wasting time to eat? So medical school is stressful because it's hard. They always tell you, I think every single medical student, anyone who works in the healthcare field will tell you, medical school is like drinking water from a fire hose. Okay, so now school is kind of like, we've kind of turned up the dial and made that a little bit more stressful. In addition to that, I'm stressed about adult things, okay? Because I did not get a full ride scholarship to medical school. I took out loans. Now, during medical school, you really can't work. Some people do have part-time jobs. I think, frankly, I don't think most people are able to pick up a job that pays significantly well for finances to not be stressful. Imposter syndrome, relationship stress, family stress, all this stuff. So I suddenly had to like just adult up very quickly in medical school. Frankly, I think there's a very interesting conversation to be had regarding arrested development, especially medical students and residents. I think we catch up. I think we do catch up. But we learn it real fast. We learn how to be an adult real fast much later. We get there though. My point is, I'm now stressed about all these things, and there is no writing happening. When I was a little kid and I had to go places I didn't want to go, I didn't actually mind a whole lot because I could just be like, oh, I'll just think about my story, or I'll just think about how I'm gonna fix this plot hole, and it was fine. I think of those moments as my lights on, no one's home moments, and that's the problem with adulthood, is that there aren't a lot of lights on, no one's home moments. Lights on, so much is going on in your head. You have responsibilities. You're thinking about your family. You're thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner. You're thinking about what the rest of your family's going to eat for dinner. You're thinking about finances. You're thinking about taxes. You're thinking about the freaking hole in the wall and the thing going on with the roof, and we need to really change that air filter. You're thinking about so many things as an adult that there isn't a lot of room for your brain to run unsupervised. And now when it does run unsupervised, because there is so much backlog of stuff in your brain, it's running unsupervised doing stupid things like anxiety. So that's medical school residency. I learned that being adult sucks because your brain is on fire. Then COVID happens. Now I know a lot of writers talk about like COVID happening, and so they were able to participate in NaNoWriMo more, and they did a lot more writing. I was a healthcare worker, so I did not do any writing during COVID. I was on an inpatient psych unit instead, because back then no one had protective gear and we couldn't find any. And it's also the psych unit, and so a lot of my patients are psychotic, so I can't really get them to wear masks. And someone on the unit did have COVID. It was very stressful. So I did not do any writing in COVID. I worked in the hospital. Then I graduate from residency and I go into private practice, and I start my own private practice, which means I'm starting from 0 patients. But after a period of time where my brain was just on fire, like 80 hours a week, it was rest. And I had suddenly the unsupervised brain back. I'm now a little over 2 years out of residency. I've written, I think, 3.5 books. One of them comes out next summer. The other one I am working on cleaning up so we can be ready to go on submission, hopefully this fall. And another one I need to go through another couple rounds of like heavy revisions, but I think is one that could potentially be ready for publishing in a year or so. Because I had this sort of mind that was free again. It was like Christmas. It was like Christmas. I was able to think about writing again and stories and ideas, and I went ham. I wrote a ton. I'd be up sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. People ask like, well, how do you do it? How are you a doctor? How are you doing these things? And now my clinic is much busier, and I've had to, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but I've had to just be a little bit more conscientious of how I do things. But back then there was no balance. It was all or nothing. It was pedal to the metal. Like, I'm going to kick you out. Yeah, you're getting kicked out. Bye. I'm like a dog with a bone. I cannot drop something if I have it between my teeth. And I've always been like this. As a kid, for example, growing up, whenever I had to practice like a piece, and I actually did not like practicing piano for this reason, because when I started practicing, if there was something I could not get, would not get up from the piano until I was able to do it. Now I'm an adult that if I can't figure something out, the right answer is to just like drop it, leave it, and come back later. As a kid, I would just sit there for like hours, like beat my head against the wall until I was able to figure out whatever I couldn't understand. And then I would do the stupid thing where, let's say I played it all the way through perfectly. I was like, excellent. I can only get up until I do it 3 times correctly, so it's not a fluke. And it had to be 3 times in a row. I don't know why I was like this. Don't diagnose me. And I'm still like this. However, I'm an adult and I have adult brain now, and so I'm able to, even though I do want to continuously beat my head against the wall to figure something out, I will get up and do something else. I have this tendency to be very all or nothing. But the time for me to learn balance, the time for me to practice balance as an adult was in my 20s. And in my 20s, I engaged with a field that did not practice balance. There are fields in medicine where they basically will tell you, you need to be okay with this job coming before literally anything else. There's a really great, I think the podcast is like, Is This a Cult? And I've listened to a couple of their episodes, and they have one on medical school. In my 20s, where people are learning about work-life balance, what that means for me, what do I need in order to be happy, what do I need in order to be content with what I'm doing in my life. I was about to say I was trapped. I was in a field where the opportunity to learn that did not exist. Like that was just, that's not the conversation we're having. Figure that out later. So I did not learn like work-life balance. I just didn't learn it. And my time to learn it came when I was 20 years old, when I'm out of residency. And I'm so beyond just jazzed about the fact that I do not have to work these stupid long hours, that I go off on the things I want to do for real. And that was right. And I went off and I work-life balance, who even is she? And so I had to learn it. Because also in my late 20s, I got married. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats because this is a zoo. I now have the free time to think about friends and friendships, and having to prioritize like relationships that matter to me, which frankly I still suck at, but I'm working on it. There's a book that I read in my late 20s, and that book is called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. And it's by Oliver Burkeman. I'll put it in the description. It's not a productivity, like hacking, like sort of like how to be the most productive person that you can be. Like that's not the purpose of this book. It's about like how do we take advantage of the 4,000 weeks that you have to live. And that is actually the average lifespan, is 4,000 weeks. And so it's more of like, how do I live those 4,000 weeks to the fullest for me. And a lot of what it is actually like saying no to things and not being productive so that you can be in the present, because you can't even be in the moment. Because the problem with productivity is that it breeds more work, which breeds more productivity. What does this mean for me now? I'm a physician, I work part-time, and I'm a writer. I realized that there were 2 things that I needed to do in order to be present in life and practice that work-life balance. And the first was acknowledge what I need as a writer. What I need is a couple hours that I know I will not be interrupted. I did not realize this was me until I watched his video. So in his video, he says that he needs to, it takes an hour or 2 to kind of ramp up, like to get in the groove, to get back into the scene of what you're doing. And then you kind of hit that like sort of plateau and you're like in the zone and you're making it happen. And then he has a couple hours of that. And then there's almost like a 1 hour like wind down of, okay, like wrapping things up. So he needs hours. He needs huge chunks and blocks of time to write, because he can't be interrupted, because if you interrupt him and kind of take him out of it, it is so hard to get back in there because it took 2 hours to get to that zone in the first place. Hard to get a good night of sleep if your pager may or may not go off that night. Like that's why call sucks. It's the same thing for writing. I can't get in a good session if I think I might get interrupted. But in medical school and residency, even on the few occasions where I was writing, it was like I was stealing time, and that's just how it was. Like I had to steal time to write. I had to steal time to rest. I was just used to my life operating like that when it stopped and I had all this time that I got to decide where I was going to spend it and what I was going to do, I still was behaving that way. Like I only have this much time. I'm stealing time in between things. So that was the first thing, is one, acknowledging what I need. What do I need to have a good writing session? The second one, and this has been way harder, which is acknowledging when I'm having a bad time. We know that even playing video games, if you're stuck in a video game, what do? Leave and come back, and you'll probably annihilate in a couple of rounds. And that is the case with writing sometimes. Sometimes and what I hate though is because you have to plan out the writing schedule, right? You've waited all week to finally have this time to write, and you have a headache. Or you waited all this time to do this, and now you're like, your period just started, and so you have a headache, and you can't think, and your brain is just like real foggier than usual. And so you're ticked off already, and clearly I'm speaking from experience. And so I'm ticked off already. I'm sitting down to write. I'm not in the headspace to write, okay? I'm just not. Sometimes the right answer is to walk away. I have to be aware of times where my brain is like, we're done here. Like, this isn't going to work. And I have to be okay with that. I am getting much better. I'd say within the last at least 2 months or so, I am getting much better at, you know, being like, okay, this is not the day. Balance isn't just being able to kind of sit in the middle of that seesaw, or for that seesaw to be completely horizontal with the, or yeah, completely parallel and horizontal to the ground. That's not balance in life. Balance in life is the seesaw tipping one direction or the other, and you realizing it and you seeing it, and then you self-correcting and getting it back to that like parallel to the ground position. That's homeostasis. Homeostasis doesn't mean everything is stagnant and still. Homeostasis is, you know, you're creating too much of this hormone, and so another hormone kind of notices and kind of tells the rest of your brain to ramp it down and bring it down this way. That's homeostasis. Homeostasis is just this. That's life. You know, kind of what works today might not work tomorrow. And realizing that means there's less of that guilt, and there's less of that shame, and there's less of that me feeling down and mad at myself when things are kind of out of whack, because I knew that's what was going to happen. I knew that's what we're doing here. I'm becoming increasingly proud of myself whenever I'm able to recognize, well, this isn't working. Like, this isn't working right now. I need to step away. Because y'all, the ability to step away from something that I was not just getting, that was the hardest lesson for me, and it gets easier each time, but I think it's because I'm also just able to recognize it, because I did not recognize it for a long time. I thought that was just resilience and working hard. No, that was banging my head against a wall. Thought I was going to title this video how I balance writing and doctoring, but I think a better title, honestly, is this, like, how has my relationship with writing changed? Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope everything I talked about today was at least mildly entertaining. Also, how would y'all feel if I put not writing stuff on here? Because I am going to a music festival this weekend, and maybe that could be fun to vlog. I don't know if y'all would care, because it's not writing. Whatever. This has been going on for a while, and I'm over it. Okay, bye.
I wish we could skip right to the end, but we keep dancing slow like